Baseball, America's most beloved pastime, has been at the forefront of their society for over a century, and its influence and historical significance stretch back even further. Famous names such as Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, and Hank Aaron are discussed in the same lofty tone that one might use when talking about the likes of Winston Churchill or Martin Luther King. From a young age, the American obsession with this sport and the characters that make up its history, both fictional and real life, has fascinated me. In case you can't tell, I'm English, and growing up in a small town on the south coast of England meant my exposure to baseball was limited to one medium: Hollywood movies. Over the years, these films have influenced me and instilled in me a love for baseball that is still as strong today as it has ever been. The only issue is, I've never been to a baseball game. I have never watched a game of baseball on TV, and have never played baseball, not counting computer games, of course. I barely know or understand the rules, hence the title of this video. My earliest memory of baseball is when my dad sat me down and done what all parents try to do: get me to watch something they like. The film was The Natural, starring Robert Redford. It tells the story of Roy Hobbs, who is shot in the abdomen whilst on his way to try out for the Chicago Cubs. This somewhat derails his baseball career, but 16 years later, he returns as a rookie to play for the struggling New York Knights. I won't go into any more detail, but suffice to say, upon its release it was a critical and commercial success. It received 4 Academy Award nominations as well as a Golden Globe nomination. So of course, I hated it. Well, hate may be a strong word, but given my age, the film was just a bit too plot heavy, and I found it difficult to get on board with certain themes and ideas that I was too young to understand. Part of this film did stay with me. As I got older, I pretty much forgot all about The Natural. I couldn't recall the title or any of the actors who were in it, but a memory remained that lingered somewhere in my subconscious. We've all got them, those memories of doing something as a child that are just a snippet of history with no context. It was only years later, upon rewatching the film, that I realised that this early memory I'd held on to was from The Natural. Of course, that memory was of the final home run. It's the 9th inning, and the Knights are trailing. Hobbs is at bat, but his old injury is causing him problems and possibly killing him. The pitcher is throwing hard and looks to take advantage of the injury by pitching on the inside, trying to hurt our hero. Hobbs makes contact with the second pitch, but it was thrown so hard that the bat explodes and the ball goes foul. Hobbs turns to the bat boy and asks him to select him a new bat. The bat boy brings him his own bat, one that Hobbs had helped him make in one of the subplots I didn't much care for as a child. Hobbs, with his gunshot wound now bleeding through his shirt and down to his last strike, steps up to the plate and in glorious slow motion hits the ball so high it collides with the floodlights, causing them to explode, sending sparks flying across the field as he triumphantly makes his way round the bases, winning his team the game and advancing them to the World Series. How much did this memory influence me? I can't be sure. But I do know that the memory of me watching that scene is as clear to me today as it was some 30-odd years ago. As I grew into liking films more and more, baseball would pop up from time to time, and not always in films about baseball. I may not have realised it at the time, but these films were quietly teaching me about America's passion for their sport, feeding me just enough information to keep me interested until I could eventually discover a film about baseball that I truly love. In one of my favourite films, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, our cocky young protagonist meticulously plans out the ultimate day of skipping school, so he and his friends can experience one last great day together before graduating high school and going their separate ways. Of course, in amongst stealing Ferraris, eating at posh restaurants and visiting art galleries, Ferris, Cameron and Sloane visit Wrigley Field to watch the Cubs play. To me, at the time, Ferris Bueller was just about the coolest guy I'd ever seen on film, and the fact that he chose to go and watch a baseball game on this of all days placed the sport in high regard with me. Then there was Naked Gun, I was a sucker for a Leslie Nielsen movie and loved everything he was in, and The Naked Gun was no exception. The final act of the film is played out in the middle of a baseball game as Frank Drebin attempts to foil a plan to assassinate Queen Elizabeth. It's not so much the baseball that takes centre stage here, but the hilarious, chaotic climax that riffs on some of baseball's customs and player idiosyncrasies that everyday fans would have been familiar with. Even without understanding how the game is played, I still found it funny and consider it to be one of the best sequences in the Naked Gun trilogy. Another film I loved was Brewsters Millions, where Monty Brewster, played by the great Richard Pryor, is given the opportunity to inherit his great-uncle's $300 million estate, but only if he can spend $30 million in 30 days and be left without a single asset. One way in which he spends the money is by hiring the New York Yankees to come and play an exhibition game against the team he plays for, the Bulls. One thing that struck me in this film was the fact that Monty Brewster didn't seem to be very good at baseball, and certainly didn't earn a lot of money from playing baseball. I used to ask myself, why does he carry on playing? Why not find something else to do? In the end, the only answer I could come up with was that he loved baseball and would rather struggle playing the game than earn more money not playing. I was too young at the time to realise he might not have had a choice. However, this was an idea I could get on board with, that he loved something so much, he accepted being miserable to carry on doing it. This was also a theme that was going to carry on into my next baseball experience, Bull Durham. Like The Natural, I didn't understand the more adult themes, but I was a little older by now, and my knowledge of cinema had somewhat grown. So, to my dad's surprise, when he sat me down to watch Bull Durham, I enjoyed it. For me, the most interesting character in the film was Annie Savoy, played by Susan Sarandon. She was kind of a baseball groupie who every year would pick one player from the Durham Bulls to be her lover. She would then help nurture them and try and help them become a better player. It was through Annie that I first saw the almost biblical way in which some people approach baseball. It was seen as being more important than them as an individual. They worshipped the game. In fact, to paraphrase Annie, she says, "I believe in the Church of Baseball. I've tried all major religions, and most of the minor ones, and the only church that truly feeds the soul, day in, day out, is the Church of Baseball." And watching the film, I truly did believe that she worshipped the game, and felt that it was her calling to give herself to the game, and ultimately the players. This is where the theme carries over from Brewsters Millions, as although Annie has a lot of bravado and truly commits to this role she has chosen in life, I never got the impression that she was truly happy, as deep down I believe she wanted more from a relationship perspective than just a different guy every year. This obviously turns out to be the case, as we find out come the end of the movie, but it was the character's bittersweet relationship with the game that caught my attention. This sad undertone is also seen in Kevin Costner's character, Crash Davis, who, as a veteran catcher coming to the end of his career, is called into the team to help a young pitcher learn the ropes and reach his full potential. Then, after a long, successful season, the young pitcher is called up to the big leagues and Crash is released, having done what he was hired to do. The film goes on to give us a happy ending when Crash and Annie both retire from their respective roles and settle down together. However, it's not the happy ending that stuck with me. It was Annie and Crash's devotion to a sport that ultimately seemed to make them unhappy. The next film I'm going to talk about is the one that would cement in me a love for baseball that would see me spend the rest of my life seeking out just about every baseball film I could find. It is, of course, Field of Dreams. How can any discussion about baseball movies be complete without mentioning this film? This was not a film my dad made me watch. It had always been sitting on the shelf in amongst the wall of VHS tapes that would help teach me about cinema. I guess he may have thought it would be a bit slow, or there was not enough action. But one day, when I was home alone, something drew me to it. It was almost like there was a voice beckoning me. "If you play me, they will come." Of course, this isn't what happened. I picked it up, saw it had Kevin Costner in, who I quite liked at the time, and decided to give it a go. It turned out to be a good decision, because I loved it. It follows a corn farmer named Ray Kinsella, who starts hearing voices that tell him, if you build it, he will come. After seeing some visions, he decides that the voice is telling him to tear down part of his cornfield so he can build a baseball diamond, and that doing so will mean that Shoeless Joe Jackson, a member of the 1919 Chicago White Sox, can play baseball again. You've seen it. You know the story. And once I managed to get my head around the idea of this farmer risking everything he had just to build a baseball field in the hope that some long-dead baseball players would be able to play ball again, I was left in awe. But maybe not for the reason you think. I did love the fantasy and mystical elements of the film. There are plenty of emotional moments to get taken up in, and James Earl Jones is just great. But what struck me the most was just the sheer love and passion for baseball that this film oozes in abundance. I'm aware the film is based on a book called Shoeless Joe, which I've never read, so I'm not sure if that passion comes from the author of the book or the director of the film, although I would imagine it's a combination of the two. But the way in which this film looks back on the 1919 Chicago White Sox with such tragic romanticism and follows that up with a cathartic redemption arc which allows those players to play baseball again. Well, this was incredible to me. Did all Americans view baseball on these terms and give an almost mythological status to both the heroes and the villains of the game? Having now spent the whole of my life viewing baseball through the lens of cinema, I've been led to believe that this is the case. I appreciate these films are made to entertain and do not represent the feelings of every baseball fan. But it can't be an accident that baseball has been romanticised so often through the medium of cinema. And I have watched my fair share of sports films, about football, hockey and basketball to name a few, but none of these other films seem to portray their respective sports with as much passion and love for the history of the game as baseball. There are plenty more films I watched during that period of my life that I haven't even mentioned, such as A League of Their Own, A Major League, or Rookie of the Year. And then there are films I watched as I grew older that have helped tighten the grip that baseball had on me, such as The Rookie, Moneyball, or The Trouble with the Curve. There are really too many to name. I haven't even mentioned the film I consider to be the best baseball movie ever made, The Sandlot, a coming-of-age tale that rejoices in the history of baseball. But I hope to dedicate a whole video to The Sandlot in the future, so won't speak any more about it here. The title of this video may be slightly misleading, because it's impossible for me to have watched all of these films and not learn a little about baseball. But the fact remains, if you put a bat in my hand and asked me to play, I would struggle. Not only through being awful, but because there was still so much I don't understand. What is the infield fly rule? Is the Mendoza line an actual line? What is a designated hitter, and why is it so controversial? But maybe not knowing these things has helped keep the mysticism of the sport alive in my heart. Please, let me know in the comments about your experiences of baseball, fictional or not, and please tell me what your favourite baseball films are. Thank you for listening.